And we're off to the races. Hello again, everybody. It's, well, Will Franken. What else would you expect? I want to thank everyone again who's contributed both the first round and the second round towards the completion of Selvatico 5, my upcoming album, which I estimate 2.5 to 3 weeks from now. And again, it's not too late. If you want to get on the Will Franken train, if you want to help produce an album a comedy album, satire album, multi-character satire album, the likes of which, if I may say so myself, is not being produced anywhere else, especially in that mainstream muck out there that calls itself comedy, be it the Edinburgh Fringe Festival or the BBC or whatever the equivalent is in America. There's still time. So if you'd like to contribute, again, there'll be a Patreon link at the bottom as well as a PayPal donate link. And thank you again to all of those who recently contributed. And I've got I'm mapping out the whole title sequence already, although I've still got plenty more on the album to do still. I'm thinking of opening the whole thing with your names and accompanied by a synthesizer piece I've written based on Handel's Saraband, is it called? Saraband, dun, 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 dun. So that may open the whole thing up or it may close it, I don't know. But you will be featured because I never forget a favor and the people that have stuck by me. You've reinvigorated my confidence in what I do. I'm still getting used to talking to the public in my own voice, but I made a vow, since so many of you have kicked in so far, that every Monday I would check in with you and almost because you're my boss. I mean, pretty much. You've paid money to see this thing get completed, and it's my way of saying I'm working, boss. But at the same time, I don't want to give anything away yet, unless you donated and said, look, I really want to hear something now. I will. I'll cut out a section or so and send it your way. But until then, I keeping it all under wraps, And I mentioned last week, I was so down on myself. I just because there's no work, and I'm never getting any love from that industry, quote unquote industry, and it's the people who there's some people who become patrons, and they might be shocked to see that I've been so silent here publicly, except for when I release an album, which months may go by, you hear nothing from me, and then boom, there's a Selvatico or Paradise Lost audiobook, and so if you become a patron, you see, my God, this guy's been talking at once a week to this group of patrons for what 3-4 years, consistently, and so now I'm, talking to you. That's what you're supposed to do if you're a marketer, because it's all about the marketing. I know the talent is a part of it. Well, the talent's a part. Talent's a very small part. The main thing is the marketing. And I don't know. Maybe I've always had. Well, and I know it. I know I've always had some reticence towards marketing, but needs must. And this is I'm an old school artist. I'm making art. And I don't know how many comedians actually do that. They say they're comedians, and they've sullied the word for me so much. I don't even like calling myself a comedian. I'm a satirist. I'm comfortable with that until they've started to ruin that word as well. But for now, I am a satirist, a character satirist, and so again, if you'd like to get in on the Franken train and be part of Selvatico 5, might be a triple album. I don't know. I'm calling them albums, not podcasts, as well, because if this was the good old days, this would come in vinyl and you put on the headphones. And but if you'd like to get on board, there's still time. There'll be a Patreon link and a PayPal link, and it is my most inflammatory. Do I want to say that? Inflammatory, but funny, consistently funny, and I'm balancing the didactic with the humor, if I may say so, very well. I've dropped a few hints of a few jokes and sketches and scenarios to the patrons, but I'm trying my best to keep tight-lipped. I will say that I'm playing around with two subtitles. It's either going to be Selvatico colon anarchico, which means savage anarchist, or then the less pretentious Selvatico colon the tale of an East Javan langur. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Langur, a type of a very beautiful monkey. Uh, so I might do that. Speaking of animals, I have a one-legged seagull, which I don't know if you can hear him hammering on the window, but he's been my pet now for the past 2.5 years, and he comes every day to receive a dose of food. So I'll just pause this here with this new technology, and I shall return. That's Gammy, the one-legged seagull, my pet. Just gave him some bread. Anyway, riffing, man, riffing. Just keep it to a riff. I was like, I got to be funny, but all my humor is being condensed and shot into this album. And as I said last week, this is so funny. The stuff I'm making is so funny. Even I'm laughing at it because I don't normally laugh at what I do. Like that plus that equals where it's supposed to go. And the whole thing seems very providential. And it's one sound effect may lead me to a different track, and a turn of phrase may lead somewhere else. But I've got a theme, and I'm very proud of the theme, and it makes a nice through line to the Selvatico catalog so far. So again, I'm doing the marketing thing. I'm repeating the marketing message, which is, again, if you'd like to join the contributors, please do either become a patron or hit the PayPal donate link below, and you'll see your name in lights come the release date. And I wanted to mention something. I don't want to do a long one because I got to get back to work, put the headphones back on, and I'd last left off with a very angry character, so I've got to get a couple cups of coffee in me and shout at the top of my lungs in this flat. But somebody got a hold of me yesterday. I think maybe you'll find this funny. I don't know. They wanted to pitch this idea of me getting on to TikTok. And it's not the first person who suggested I get on TikTok, and my stuff would do very well on TikTok. And I don't want to get on TikTok. I didn't hear about TikTok until, and I think it's been around before then, from what I understand, but I didn't hear about TikTok until they told us there was a bubonic plague in 2020. You remember those good old days? Something like the bubonic plague is coming, and we're all gonna have to get on the internet there. And I didn't hear about that or Zoom until that official story came creeping across the airwaves. TikTok, and I seem to remember it had something to do with nurses dancing in the midst of the. They did it. It was a TikTok thing, wasn't it, or Instagram or something? And I never wanted any. I never wanted a Facebook, and somebody made me a Facebook. I never wanted Twitter, and somebody made me a Twitter. I got rid of the Twitter in, I think, 2017, so I haven't done Twitter in 2017, and I feel I'm the better for it. I don't post anything in my own voice on Facebook. I used to, and paid the emotional price for that. And now the only time I use it is to stick up a video or let my work speak for itself. But also TikTok. I was so somebody sent me an email yesterday and said, here's a sample of a guy who's doing very well on TikTok, and I didn't know about all of this stuff until I started researching into who the Comedy Unleashed guys were after they blacklisted. I never used the phrase canceled. I was blacklisted, blackballed, banned. Because people who say they've been canceled, what it usually means is I can't play that gig, but I can play all these. But no, I was banned. When you piss off a swathe of people, you end up getting banned from working in your field. And I was looking into all of this, and I had no idea about artificial comments. I didn't know that people did this. They bought comment packages, and that's why you'll see, 7 times in a row, you for prime minister, you should be prime minister, you should be prime minister. Which I take the piss out of near the end of the Selvatico 4, Baby Reindeer Part 2. And so I didn't, I had no idea the level of fakery. And you guys make me very proud. The ones that have contributed, and it's a much smaller audience. And I realized what happened was I stopped making regular videos for the public, and one of you had emailed me and said that was the case, that you check on somebody and they're not making stuff available for the public, and eventually you stop checking after a while, and I can sympathize with that. but I had no idea that that was, that's the kind of stuff that people are doing nowadays. They'll just purchase a whole batch of comments and generate the traffic. And so this email yesterday, somebody said something about the algorithms will something. I said, fuck the algorithms. Whoever's giving me money, you guys I'm speaking to, whoever's contributing money, these are real human beings. So you guys are real human beings that are acknowledging this real human being here and what this real human being can do and has done. And you're showing me that in a real human way. I went, here's some money so you stay alive in order to get this done. And I didn't have to do any purchasing of comments or juggling algorithms, and I did not have to get a TikTok account to do that. And of all the things that I'm grateful for, that's one of the many things that I'm grateful for. That I was so down on myself. I thought, you're going to post this video from 2 weeks ago, and you'll get $2. And I never heard of the guy, I tried to get some gigs in the opening months after the whole bubonic plague story, and I remember this one lady in Scotland saying, "What level are you at?" I said, for fuck's sake, man, like, look at all this press. Like, I was in the New York Times, Robin Williams, Stuart Lee, Harry Hill, like the list of accolades goes on and on. A Guardian, 4 stars from the Guardian and 4 stars from the Times. And, it's just, these people are just, and these are the TikTok generation. Like, they start up and they start a comedy night and they get a TikTok profile and what level are you at? And it's like, fucking hell, man, what happened in a few months, But that's the thing, the intelligence test that we we're hoping that everybody would pass in 2020. The majority of people failed that intelligence test, and the blind acceptance of artificial intelligence proves that we're going to continue down that route. And I'm not going to reward people for their short attention span. I'm not going to reward that. And I thought, hypothetically, I thought, I am very resistant to things, and I always have to check myself. Is this Will Franken being, purposely contrary and resistant to something that might help him? And I thought theoretically, yeah, maybe I could do something, have the most pithy observation, the funniest character for 40 seconds to a minute. But do I want to play to that kind of audience? Because that's actually not what I do. TikTok is not what I do. I make albums for people who have an attention span, to follow a train of thought, to marvel at the transitions between characters, and to reach the conclusion. And I think it's very significant that in the opening days of the lockdown, that I did I did the unabridged version of John Milton's Paradise Lost. I wanted to step back from comedy for a little bit. I thought the whole thing, everything was so fucked up in the comedy world. There was one side that called themselves left, that were going out advertising banks, the establishment, and you had this other side that were being funded by Tory donors and think tanks and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was weird, So when I told Comedy Unleashed when I satirized them in that last gig on the 20th of March 2020, a part of me was kind of wanting a break. And I stepped back and I said, okay, I want to do the definitive version of Paradise Lost, because I was cleaning the house one day and I was listening to the BBC's version from, I think, 2007. And I noticed, first off, that they'd mispronounced many words. They'd cut out entire sections that required learning the pronunciation of place names and deities. And strangely enough, the BBC's version of Paradise Lost is 4 hours shorter than mine. So somewhere along the way, they chucked out 4 hours of Milton. But that took, in order to complete that, and I'm talking about 8-hour days, that took a year and 2 months. And I was posting, random stuff in the interim about, what I felt was going on with the world and everything. But the project itself took a year and 2 months. Because that's what people did back in the day when they cared about art. They took time. They wanted to make it good. Kubrick would make a film and he'd disappear for a few years. You didn't know what the fuck he was going to do, but when it came out, it was an event. And nowadays, we nakedly reward people who don't have any attention spans, and we nakedly reward insincerity by agreeing to purchase artificial comments, or what's the term, astroturf. I only know that from the baseball world, and I briefly thought about it just to check that I wasn't being recalcitrant and stubborn, I thought, no, I'm not a TikTok person. I'm not a tweeter. And it is a lost cause in the big picture of things. Yes, I understand that. I know the business model has changed. I mean, I never had a business model to begin with. I know that the business model has changed. I'm not stupid. The business model is make something really stupid and easily digestible for a swathe of morons. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to reward stupidity. I think the world rewards stupidity far too much, and many of us have paid the price for refusing to reward stupidity or to play into stupidity or to profit from stupidity. You are my audience. The people that have contributed are my audience. And numbers be damned. You mean a lot. You mean infinitely more to me than, a potential 90,000 subscribers on TikTok. That's what you guys have done for me is you're buying me time in order to make something beautiful, funny, acerbic, vicious, but vicious towards the right institutions and the right people. And I can't thank you enough for that. I'm halfway through my thank yous. I sent out some thank yous yesterday morning, so if I haven't got to you yet, that's why I'm working Monday through Saturday, 9 to 10 hour days on this album. And it's yes, that seems slow. And that's another thing I thought last night too. When I got that email, I said theoretically, yeah, you could get up in the morning and do a 40-second clip like, "Hello, I'm David Johnson of the Foundation," or this is what my father sounds like when he can't remember his name. I'm Mr. Goat. I could do that, and who knows? Maybe when people are doing the scrolling past 3,000 things at once, maybe they'll accidentally light upon me, and maybe I'll strike a nerve, and it will go quote unquote viral. I could theoretically do that, and yet the thing embarrasses me so much. The name TikTok, is an embarrassment, and I often wonder why people use emojis. There are old men I know that communicate. They sign off with emojis. I did a couple years ago. I wrote an article, by the way. I don't know because you guys we haven't kept in touch. So what can I say? But 2 years ago, I wrote an article for the Philosopher magazine. If you look up the philosopher Will Franken, Aristotle, maybe about the state of comedy and how Plato did not like comedy because to him it led to anarchy and it moved away from the perfect idealized state. And Aristotle liked comedy because it brought about happiness, because it subverted, it allowed for a little bit of subversion of the state. And so the thesis of my article that I wrote was that it's not, as so many scholars have said before, that Plato and Aristotle disagree about what comedy is. That's not true. They agree. So my assertion is that they agree what comedy is. They disagree about what happiness is. And for Plato, the happiness was the state operating perfectly, and comedy was an aberration against that. Whereas Aristotle said that the happiness comes from the fact of being able to subvert the state. Now, if you look at the comedy that the BBC is producing or the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is rewarding, you have comedy that upholds the state. We every now and then the girlfriend and I will peek in on what's being done in the name of comedy currently, and there was some game show now with Richard Osman hosting, and it was Sarah Pascoe, Harriet Kelmsley, and two other jerk-off comedians competing in a game show, and they weren't even playing for laughs anymore, and there wasn't even an audience, and they're just making they're actually, it was like find the word in the sentence or whatever, and I just this is it's a weird kind of fascism. It's kind of like we don't give a fuck about being funny, we don't give a fuck about how entitled we look. And there was something about it. So I was asking, I was like, do they even allow ordinary people to compete in game shows anymore? Because I think this is a trend that they're not going to let John and Mary get on a game show anymore. It's going to be some celebrity always on a fucking game show. Or you can go, or they redefine what a celebrity is. So you might see Celebrity Mastermind, and it's so and so from the EastEnders, so and so a choreographer, and this guy a TikTok influencer. And I was like, okay, so we're going to change the definition of what the fuck a celebrity is. So the algorithm like favored this guy, so we're going to let him compete on Celebrity Master. And the whole thing is just a big fuck you to ordinary people. You know, and it's a fuck you to comedy. Anyway, I brought that up because on the heels of getting that article published a couple of years ago, I don't even know what I call. Oh, I called it "On Violent Laughter and Comedic First Principles." And so I've done a few. As some of you know, that I was shortlisted for the Anthony Burgess Award. Didn't win. Kind of sucks. If you become a Patreon, you could read the details of that award ceremony. But the philosopher thing was pretty cool, and that was published. And I was asked to review a book and interview the guy who'd written a book on humor, who taught at the University of Cornell. Is it Cornell University? I think it's an Ivy League university. I'm not sure, but nice guy, very nice guy. And you know, I've been out of academia for a long time. You know, I got my master's degree many years ago, and in what, 96 maybe, 96, 97, master's in literature, and so I was a little bit, you know, and I was thinking maybe this is what I should, you know, maybe I'll do this. You know, like I can't get any comedy work, so maybe I'll, you know, try to get a job at, you know, in academia again or something like that. That's kind of fun, you know. And I was so nervous about interviewing this guy, and I wrote my email to him like proper grammar, you know, put in a few clever turns of phrases, you know, and just 3 sentences, but just I very much look forward to interviewing you, and until then, you know, commas all in the right places. And the response I got in the email was a big yellow thumbs up. And I thought, that's very, an Ivy League professor, you know, who's Generation X or older. This is not right. This is not right, you know? Uh, and that's, TikTok caters to that. You know, from what little I've seen of TikTok, that's what you're writing for. You're writing for people who eventually will communicate. Like the airport security, when you pass airport security, how was your experience today? You have 5 choices. Was it a flatline face? Was it a smiley face? Was it a not so smiley face? You know, the retardation of emotion. That's not what I play to. That's not what I write. You know, and maybe I'm a fool. Maybe I could get on TikTok and, you know, but I'm writing for the people who gave me money and hopefully are going to continue giving me money. Again, there'll be a Patreon link and a PayPal link in these videos. But the people who are contributing to this album, they don't want me to do 40 seconds of, this is my dad when he's had a bit too many. I've had a bit too many. Oh, you know, and then and I thought too, the guy sent me something, and people always do say, well, this guy's, you and this guy are kind of similar. And it's like, I look at the first thing I do is like, how are we similar? No, we're not similar at all. He has one character. And then he's got all these dates that go by. It's like, what kind of moron would purchase a ticket for a show based on somebody speaking like this for 40 seconds and then falling down? That's not the kind of audience I would want at a hypothetical live show. I want you guys. You know, you're small in numbers now because I took a break from all of this stuff for years. And now, you know, I needed help. I said, you know, I'm not getting any work out there in the comedy world, which was my career, and I'm not getting any work out here in this new world. You know, what clerical, manual, otherwise, occasional gardening work. I've done some gardening work, and you know, raking and hoeing and mowing and all of that good stuff. And I thought, fuck it, you know, go throw it all back into comedy again. And you guys are helping me buy a little breathing room to get this done. And so, you know, the audience may be smaller right now because I haven't been consistently making. That's another thing too. Now with the TikTok, you have to make something. And I was watching this guy that was sent to me as a sample clip of how TikTok works and the magic of TikTok. And I thought, he's not funny. He's not saying anything interesting because you can't really develop a theme in 40 seconds to a minute. You definitely can't bleed in and out of character. I can do about 40 characters in 20 minutes, as those who've seen me live or listened to the albums know. But, you know, what can you do in 40 seconds? And also extremely uninspired. You can tell there's no inspiration. And you know why? It's the same reason why these guys, like I figure once a week, right? Like this, last one I made for you guys was a week ago, right? So, there's some time has elapsed. But the guys, especially now, who are making a living off of the you can't say anything anymore. You can't make this stuff up, man. A lady was not allowed to go to the toilet because a transgender person had locked himself in there with an M16 assault rifle. I think. I don't know. I mean, could we verify that? It's so uninspiring and so artificial because they have to do it every day. It's like every day the news has to give us some new thing to care about, right? So there is no such thing as a slow news day. It'll just be now you're supposed to care about Ukraine, and here's what's happening in Israel, and maybe there'll be another virus, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to keep babbling and filling up the space. So on top of everything else, the guy, the TikTok guy that I was asked to look at, seemed totally uninspired. And why wouldn't he be? Because you're not doing this because you're passionate and you want to say anything. You're doing this because you want to build a following and build up an audience and generate the algorithms. That's not fucking passion. God damn it, I'm a fucking human being, man. And I'm conflicted too because I know the person that suggested this. I'm taking it on face value that they have my best interest at heart until it's proved otherwise. And I'm going to assume that the person wants the best for me, but at the same time, I'm so angry at this shit like TikTok that that's the last thing that the doctor needs right now is another fucking shrinking the attention span platform. And YouTube, of course, has its faults. It's a capitalist whorehouse. It'll interrupt a Beethoven sonata to sell you a Grammarly AI. It's a fucking whorehouse. But there is something about the layout that seems so antiquated because it's like, here are 6 choices. Would you like to have any of the... Whereas this fucking TikTok thing, it's like, short. Yeah, why short? Because I want to reward your stupidity. You were the fucking people that would have thrown me in a fucking gas chamber once upon a time because you didn't think for yourself. Why would I reward you with anything of my creativity? The TikTok audience, I'm yelling at them. Those of you who know me know that I can sometimes see the enemy there or there, and I suppose that's how a lot of the comedy gets made. But I'm saying all of this out of gratitude to you guys for showing me that there are still people out there who can listen to something for an hour and a half. I remember making the Blake documentary, and I got an email from somebody about 17 minutes in. Well, I know it was 17 minutes in because the email was 17 minutes in, loving it. And I was like, have you ever seen a movie? Have you ever been to a movie theater? You go in, the lights go down. I just don't understand this. Anyway, so I'm saying this all out of gratitude to those of you that are watching and appreciating these things and are still with me after all of this time, and maybe even some newcomers. Maybe you jumped in Selvatico 4 recently or whatever, and you're going back or whatever. But thanking the people that are still out there that have the attention and the intelligence because that was always my audience. My audience was always, I never underestimated my audience's intelligence. And sometimes I've been very angry at myself about that, I must admit. Sometimes I've been very like, must you always assume, because, when I have had a bad show, it's always because I've gone in there and I never tried to dumb anything down. I was like, this is what I wrote. There's no reason people can't get this if they try. Aim high and they'll follow you. And, it's worsened because the state, the powers that be, want you stupid. They don't want you to have a fucking attention span. They want you on TikTok, and I've wanted that. I wanted that about everything that came out in 2020 that was associated with a tech platform. You start hearing about Zoom, you start hearing about TikTok. I just assumed by default it must be some kind of benefit to the state somehow. It must be. What better to benefit the state than just real quick, Ja oder Nein, the Hitler election. Ja oder Nein? Say ja! Okay, move on, Now you might think that's a bit dramatic. I mean, after all, it is just TikTok and it's cute little pictures of mushroom men falling over into magical wells. But is it? I don't know. So this is all meant, again, as a sincere thank you to the people out there that are still with me after all this time, that like to see me chase the thought and meander and go into these logical pitfalls that result from following a satirical trajectory, and because I think it's going to be, it's even if it's a lost cause, which I don't necessarily think it is, because you got to have a little bit of hope to make anything. Even if it is ultimately a lost cause and the world is just going to go into this, how was your experience today at the airport? Happy, sad, neutral, you know, digital, in other words, purely digital. So it's a thank you to the real humans that have given this real human uh, some financial love. To say, I know you, and what I'm making is a human thing. It's a comedic human reaction to the inhuman horseshit of contemporary living, as being peddled to us by Das State. So, with that, I've gone a little bit longer than I thought I was going to go to. Felicity and Poppy and whoever else I'm impersonating right now. Do I want to give you one joke? No, no, no. I want to save them all. I don't know. I want to save them all. I'm about to introduce a character who has a very funny name when I get back into the studio. So I think I'll leave it at that. But again, thank you humbly from the bottom of my heart to the humans out there who want to listen to my longer form projects. They're not long because I get off on. I've done short stuff too, but when you're talking in matters of seconds, like, come on, man. Come on, like there was a thing called an album once upon a time. People could listen to Sergeant Pepper's, and it wasn't a big deal. Like it was, what was it, 47 minutes, Sergeant Pepper's? They did that. You could do other things. You could smoke a joint when you listen to Sergeant Pepper's or my albums if you want. Um, you know. So anyway, that's to the people who still have an attention span, to the people who still know how to follow a theme, a series of characters, who enjoy transitions from one sequence to the other. Thank you, because without you, I would be finished. And thanks to your contributions for today, Baruch Hashem, I am not finished. So thank you to you all. And again, if you want to join the Will Franken submarine, train, hang glider, there will be a Patreon link and a PayPal link below. Till then, I will see you all next week, and it's back in the studio with me. Hang tight, Selvatico 5 is coming. Cheers.